Triple Crown winner, a Breeders' Cup winner, a horse of a lifetime!
Hello and welcome to Tournament Talk on the Tournament Edge 2016 edition. I'm Bobby Shoemaker, and that's Barry, the Sniper Spears. 4 races, and all of them at Gulfstream Park. Barry, are you ready to kick the 2016 Tournament Talk off on a winning way?
Absolutely. 2016 is our year. Let's go.
All right, so we're going to start with race 4 on the card. It is 2 turns on the turf. A graded 3 stakes race, $150,000 on the line. Barry, it's a mile and a 16th on the turf for 4-year-olds and up. The one horse is your morning line favorite. Who do you see upsetting him?
Ooh, this is a really interesting race. A nice grade 3 here to kick us off in the new year. You know, a lot of these horses are coming off layoffs, coming in from up north in New York and Kentucky, just trying to get their foothold in here for the season the upcoming season on the turf. So this is going to be a great grade 3 to kick things off. However, in this race, I thought it was a little bit of a Captain Obvious special. There was only 2 horses that I really zeroed in on. The one you mentioned, the one horse Sandiva, who's out of the Todd Pletcher barn, who, you know, as much as he runs horses, his numbers are always outstanding, and it's unbelievable. But in that same token, his grass numbers are not as good. They're not bad, but they're just not as good as any other surface.
Not as good as we're accustomed to when it comes to Todd Pletcher.
Exactly. You know, there's some situations where he's automatic on the dirt with some younger horses. His turf runners, not so much. This one in particular did run well last year. In a three race stretch with 2 wins in a close second against similar competition. Everything looks right for this horse. Had some, just firing bullets, some great works here coming through. So I definitely think that this horse is going to give a good account of herself. But, I decided to take a pass here. Although, I think this horse has every right to win this race, especially off the layoff. I just want to go to a different horse, and I think these horses might run 1-2. The horse I zeroed in on was Hope Cross, who I think I picked before, almost picked before. I think this horse, just looking at the race that he lost, or she lost to Tuta Paese, is a horse that's directly outside of her on Saturday. It looks like that race sets this horse very well for this race on Saturday. Now, getting that stretch out does mean a lot. I think this horse will appreciate that little extra distance, and I think that will get Hope Cross over the hump with Joe Bravo in the irons. The last race where Tuta Paese beat her had some issues in the stretch, a little blocked, had a little bad luck. Probably wasn't going to beat Tuta Paese, but may have made it a little bit closer. But I think on Saturday, that's the day for Hope Cross to come through. Sandiva looks like a runner-up finish. I think they're going to finish 1-2 there.
As you remember, I had Tuta Paese in Tournament Talk, and it was a little tepid that day because she had just won at Suffolk Downs, but Bill Mott definitely had her rolling and was very impressed in that last start. And for the longest time while reading this race, Barry, I wanted to land on the 8 horse, and the more I looked at it, I narrowed it down to 2 horses. It was the 6 and the 8 for me. I didn't like the 1 at all. I thought the 1 is very beatable for a lot of the points that you already brought up, considering Todd Pletcher's numbers on the turf compared to dirt. The more I looked at it, the more I liked the 6 horse, and that's where I ended up going. I think it's Divine Ada. That's where I went, and here's why. If you go back to the first race off the layoff on October 12th, this horse ran its eyeballs out, did everything but won and lost to what I felt like was a very good Partisan Politics that day. If that wasn't the best race that Partisan Politics has ran all year, or I guess we're looking at last year at this point, right, then it was one of the best. I don't know what happened last race, Barry. I was a big fan of this horse. I bet this horse to win at the racetrack at 6-1. I thought that was a steal. I don't know if it was the surface. The turf was not firm that day. I was surprised the races even stayed on the grass at Churchill Downs, to be quite honest. It says good on the form. It wasn't good. It was more like yielding. And I also did not like the ride that Joe Bravo gave the 6. This horse wants to be on or near the lead, especially going a mile and a 16th. That was not the case last time. I think if this horse can revert back to its original effort, which got me on this horse to begin with, this horse is a big-time player. He could win this race. And you're looking at a jockey upgrade, Barry, from Joe Bravo to Luis Saez, who is off to a really good start at Gulfstream Park, and you've mentioned this before, and I tend to agree with you. Luis is a good jockey as a whole, but he's better on the turf, especially with horses that want to be on or near the lead. He's got a very good clock in his head. So I chose the 6 over the 8 because of Christopher Clement, third off the trainer change, which is big to me. I think this horse wants to be a little fresh, and the horse is 56 days off its last race. And with Luis Saez getting aboard, I think that's a big-time jockey move. I think the 6 is set up for his best effort. If we can get a firm turf course at Gulfstream Park on Saturday, I think this thing's got a really good chance of running 6-8.
Yeah, I mean, definitely you can tell, just by looking in the past performances of the dramatic improvement this horse made once he went to the Clement barn. That's really something to see when a horse does that. So he definitely found out the quirks in this horse and figured out, where he can get the most out of this horse. So
right.
I would not be surprised at all if this horse wires this field. Especially, the last race, like you said, there was some cut in the ground. She may not have liked it.
Right.
Blinkers came off first time. Get settled this time, may run a lot better than she did the first time.
So everything that we're just talking about, Barry, the blinkers off, the cut in the ground, I mentioned I thought it was a suspect ride by Bravo. You're better at this than me. What do you see the 6 going off at? Am I going to get that 6-1, or are people going to bet this horse?
No, you should probably get around 5-6-1. That's like right on the money as far as the price. I don't think that, I think Hope Cross and Sandiva are going to take a lot of action, especially Sandiva, giving her past, especially last year running at Gulfstream Park. So, that horse and Pletcher and JJ, they're really going to take a lot of money. So you'll probably get that price, maybe even a little higher, maybe even 7-1 when things shake out.
What have been your thoughts thus far about the shippers from Churchill Downs? Now, Gulfstream Park is a very unique racetrack this time of year, Barry, because everyone's shipping from everywhere. And I have found, at least on the lawn, that these horses from Churchill Downs coming from that fall meet, which I'm telling you, Barry, it probably was the best meet, in my opinion, in the country this fall. Your thoughts on the horses translating from Churchill Downs to Gulfstream Park, specifically on the turf?
Yeah, I think they've held their own. Their form has been holding solid. So I don't expect anything different here, especially from a top-notch outfit from, Clement. So he knows his horses very well, and he's a great trainer. So he's going to have that horse ready to go.
Okay, so Barry is on the 7, Hope Cross. I am on the 6, Divine Ada. The next race, webcast fans, will be race 6, obviously at Gulfstream Park. It's a $46,000 optional claimer, also 2 turns on the turf, 1 mile and 1/8 for 4-year-olds and up. Barry, who do you see winning this one, and how do you see this thing playing out from a pace perspective? That was what I had a little bit of a difficult time trying to read earlier today.
Well, this is a very interesting race because I think this is going to turn into a rider's race, to be honest with you. There really isn't too much speed in here. Now, with that being said, I'm going to just go to the 8 horse, who is Snow Trouble. Again, we're talking about Pletcher, Javier Castellano, top connections, top rider, everything you want going your way. However, they're always overbet, which is certainly a negative for guys like us and tournament players alike, because you're not going to get a good price on a horse like this coming out of that barn.
Right.
he looks like a deep closer also. All of his races, even if you go back to his form in the UK, he's just coming from way back. I think that's probably going to be the same style that's going to be employed on Saturday. So with the pace scenario, like I see it as not being that hot, this horse is going to be up against it, coming through traffic, a lot of horses going to the same spot. Just not something I want to see, so I'm going to pass there. The next horse I'll talk about is Dorset, who is the direct outside horse to Snow Trouble, with Julian Leparoux, Brian Lynch, who always has his horses fit and ready. Now, the last race this horse ran at Aqueduct, he ran against a horse named Fire Away, who, in my estimation, is probably going to be a nice little stakes horse. And this horse was kind of wide the whole way and didn't really get into it. Kind of regressed a little bit from the form, so I see why they laid this horse off. Right. Brian Lynch has pretty good numbers coming off the layoff, so I expect this horse to be fit and ready, but just maybe a little bit too short, so I decided to pass. Now, that brings me to the horse I did select, who is Hollywood Idol, out of the Ralph Nix barn, who is on fire down there in South Florida. This horse looks like to have a big pace advantage on the rest of them here. Has a good jockey. One I love when he rides on the lead. I mean, he's almost second to none when he gets a horse into the race. Right. It's unbelievable how he does that. This horse, I think, has a really big pace advantage. I think he can rock them all to sleep and kick clear in the lane and finish this one off. So that's the horse that I took.
Hollywood Idol, the 6th horse for Barry Spears, and Hollywood Idol, the 6th horse, will be for Bobby Shoemaker as well. I read this race as I knew the 6 had the best numbers from a turf perspective, Barry, and I knew the 6 was going to be forwardly placed, if not on the lead. And anytime you can get a horse that you feel like is the best horse, is the fastest horse, and he's also going to be on the lead, saving as much ground as he can. And Joel Rosario, I cannot tell you how many pick 4s or pick 3s that I've won or stayed alive in when I single him going long on the turf with a horse that I felt like was the lone speed. And he has found himself again. I mean, last Sunday, this guy was a magician. It was vintage. Last Saturday, it was vintage Joel Rosario. 5 wins, ladies and gentlemen. And he did it from all sorts of different ways. In traffic, saving ground, going to the rail. It looked like the Joel that was on all of Todd Pletcher's horses a couple of years ago, Barry. So I'm with you here on the 6th horse. I don't think we're going to get 4-1 morning line, unfortunately. Here is the key horse to me that I want you to look at in your PPs, and it's the 3 horse, for goodness sake. This horse has been on dirt the majority of his career. In fact, he's only been on turf once, August 20th at Arlington Park. But you look at this horse's last race on a wet, fast racetrack. Unbelievable numbers in time form, how I do the math. And we've talked about how I do it off the air. Obviously won't give up too much information. But I'm telling you, Barry, this horse is capable of going to the lead. And that race last time out from a numbers perspective is as fast as the 6, if not faster. So my fear is this. The 3 and the 6 get into a pace duel. But if Joel continues to ride the way he's been riding as of late, he'll lay off the 3 if the 3 does go to the lead. And when they turn for home, then he'll give him the juice, and then the 6 will win the race. So the 3 is a horse I'm going to include in my exotics. I think he'll be a price, and I think if he does make the transition to the turf, he could be a player. But in the end, I think Hollywood Idol is the best horse. I think he's got one of the best jockeys once again, and he's just the fastest horse in this race, especially on turf. And I just think the 6 is the best, and he'll win.
Yeah, I saw the speed on the for goodness sake as well. Just kind of skeptical and a little worried why this horse hasn't really run too many times on the turf. Yeah. Only twice, which is not a lot in a race like this. That's really with some turf specialists.
Right.
I'm not really sure, but again, I've seen stranger things happen. These 2 horses, Hollywood Idol and for goodness sake, could actually run 1-2 around the track.
I think so.
It's definitely possible.
My only fear is and this is why I'm going to include this horse in any exotics. I don't want him to compromise us, or I don't want Joel to get lazy going, he'll come back to us. Because, we have seen that from New York riders, and they haven't necessarily done it at this racetrack, but they certainly have a tendency to do it up north. So I'm just going to go 3-6 in anything I do from exotic wagering perspective, but I definitely think at the end of the day we're on the right horse. Hollywood Idol for Bobby Shoemaker and Barry Stiker Spears. So the third race of the Tournament Talk show for 2016 is race 9 on the card. It is our only dirt event, which is certainly okay with me. It's a $44,000 allowance optional claimer. It's a mile on the 16th. It's for 3-year-olds. A lot of big names in here, Barry. A lot of talent in here from a lot of different ways. How do you see this one playing out?
Yeah, this is what I call like one of the prototypical Gulfstream Park young 3-year-old races, where you have a lot of these horses just breaking their maiden, stepping up into a high-level optional claimer. Everybody looks good. It's hard to differentiate in a sense, because any one of these horses can step up and run another number just like they did previously to break their maiden, if not jump even higher. So this is where, you kind of get a little bit of those sleeper derby type horses going 2 turns on the dirt at Gulfstream. So, you may see one of these horses end up in the Florida Derby eventually, maybe, depending on what happens, and see what happens from there. But first, I'd like to talk about, again, the Todd A. Pletcher contingent, starting with number 8.
Recurring theme.
Absolutely, and I'm sure people, I know horse players are definitely sick of the Todd Pletcher parade of winning and losing short price horses. I'm going to start with 8, Battery, who ran a pretty decent race at Gulfstream Park West back in November and has been laid off since. Again, Pletcher's numbers off of these kind of layoffs are usually pretty outstanding. He just does it all from that perspective. It's interesting that Castellano lands on this horse rather than the 5, who was the other Pletcher horse that I'll talk about in a second. This horse is a higher priced horse. They paid $350,000 for him. Definitely well meant out of Bernardini. This horse should love the turns, going 2 turns, just like he did back on November 21st. But it says that was a fast track. It was kind of, the rains were coming down that day. It was absolutely poured that whole day. And even some of the turf races that were listed say firm, but I know Lochte won, who's in the race previous to this one. It was like a monsoon, and you could see the puddles in the middle of the turf. So, that may, give you an indication of why that number may be a little bit inflated on that horse. So I decided to take a stand against, at least on Saturday. The 5, who is Baby Bear Soup. Now, this horse is a cheaper horse. They only paid $40,000 for him. You don't see very many Ramsey horses trained by Todd Pletcher, which was interesting enough as it is.
Right.
The horse did run pretty good at the track at Gulfstream at a mile. Not really sure who or how much he beat in that maiden score, so I'm deciding to pass there as well. Irad's in for the ride, who, at least in my estimation, has some struggles riding races on the dirt. So, I'm definitely going to take a pass there. So I landed on number 9, Perfect Saint. Dale Romans, it's a real interesting move by this horse. After he broke his maiden, he jumped up into a Grade 2, the Kentucky Jockey Club, and just got thumped by some pretty good horses, including More Spirit, who is definitely a leading contender, at least at this point, for the Derby. And Air Force, who's a definite
big fan of him, Barry. Big fan of Air Force.
Absolutely.
Not to knock you off stride here, but you bring that horse up. He was unbelievable on the turf to lose to Hit It a Bomb, who people, they won't know how good that horse is because he's going to go overseas and win a ton of races. Then they put him on the dirt in the slot, and he looks like a superstar. That right now is a horse that I put in my stable mail. I'm a big fan of Air Force.
Absolutely, and that horse is proven, more of a Grade 1 type. So now this horse is coming back into an optional claimer. might have a little bit of actually a lot of bit of class relief here. So, I don't really think that Perfect Saint really liked the slop, it seems. And, that combined with being overmatched, this ends up being a great spot. I like the bullet, albeit it was only one of four. Still showed some pep. And I think this horse is going to sit a pretty good trick coming down the lane.
I see what you're saying about Perfect Saint. I took a long look at the 9. I am a complete play against both Pletcher horses. I don't think either one of them are fast enough and good enough to win this race. I'll get right to it. The one horse, One More Shot. Love the horse. And here's why, Barry. It's not who he faced. It's how he did this. I looked at the numbers and how I calculate things, and it jumped off the page to me. So I said, I've got to watch the replay. This horse could have won by 12 lengths, won by 8. Did it in Tampa. Jamie Ness is clearly a very successful trainer. Goes from a jockey at Tampa to, again, Luis Saez. And think about this too, Barry. The one, which is One More Shot, broke his maiden from the rail. We both know horses first time out struggle coming from the rail because they feel pinched in. A lot of times they back out when they come out of the gate. They don't break well. This horse settled nicely like a professional. Furthermore, we also see horses go in sprint races, right? 9 times out of 10 to get them ready to go 2 turns. This horse breaks from the 1 hole, going 2 turns, doesn't even go to the lead, settles and rates, and then wins this race by 8. And I'm telling you, Barry, you need to watch the replay of this race. He could have won by the length of the stretch. It was one of the more impressive feats by one horse, not talking about who else he faced, but from a physical perspective, one of the best looking maiden breakers that I have seen in quite some time. I understand he's outclassed. I get why he's 12-1. But the numbers say he's the fastest horse in this race. And what did you say to me about 5 minutes ago? You said horses often improve. Second,
Absolutely.
third off the leg, or third career start. This horse has every right to get better than what he already was. And that was outstanding to begin with. So to all you race fans, you can bet Todd Pletcher. You can bet him all day. I'm going to take a shot at One More Shot. And in fact, if he's 12-1, this is absolutely my play of the Tournament Talk show. One More Shot, the one horse to upset the field.
That's all right. Take one more shot.
That's right. So we're going to move on to race 10 on the card, last but certainly not least. And this is vintage Gulfstream Park on the turf late in the day in January. It's a $200,000 Grade 2 stakes race, 1 mile and 1/16 on the turf, 4-year-olds and up. Who you got, Barry?
Well, this is definitely, like you said, this is what you live for when you play Gulfstream Park. It's some top-notch horses here, battling it out on the turf. Some rising up in class, some staying in class off the layoff. So it should be a really good one. The first horse I'd like to talk about would be Lochte, the one who is definitely, without question, a horse for the course there at Gulfstream Park. I mean, the horse has run 100-plus buyers, almost every time he's run at that track. So I don't expect anything different out of Lochte. I know a few years back he upset a Grade 1 there, and and has been rolling ever since. And this horse is an honest horse, will give you the effort every time.
Right.
And with that said, there's really no knock on this horse. He's been training well, but I just don't feel this is the right spot for him to win. He's definitely going to give a good account of himself, but I just don't think he's going to be the horse on top when it's all said and done. The next horse is really interesting to me, and I almost went to this horse as my pick, and it was number 8, Takeover Target, out of the Chad Brown barn. This horse is really looks to be on the improve. I mean, I've seen a lot of horses from Chad Brown look exactly like this and step up and win a big race. Kind of almost lying in the weeds, almost like the sniper, just waiting and just, ready to pounce. And I think this horse has that look. A lot of the horses or the races that he's been running previously, like back in Belmont, especially in early May, against some good competition, like Divisadero finished second to that horse by a neck, and really almost could have won that race. I mean, it was a really tight neck.
Right.
Ended up going in the Belmont Derby. Didn't run that bad. Just couldn't muster up any run in the stretch out of the one hole, and just has been steadily progressing. Irad's in town for this ride, I think specifically.
Absolutely.
So, I think that this horse is definitely well met on Saturday. But I ended up going with War Correspondent, who I think has more upside than Takeover Target. I mean, this horse has run 4 stellar races out of the gate since coming to this country from France. Clement is definitely the guy you want to have a horse off a layoff of this type. He excels with these kind of runners. I don't expect anything different. I think this horse is a superstar in the making. At least for this next year. I mean, he's 6 years old, but I don't know if you've seen in the past, Clement horses have gotten better with age. And I think this horse is definitely going to give his best shot on Saturday, and I expect that.
Concerned that Jose Lezcano's on him?
Not at all. I think Lezcano is definitely a kind of not so much under the radar rider, but he's aggressive. And I think that's what this horse's style is. I think the more aggression and getting this horse in the mix early, at least in the hunt, this horse is going to be tough coming down the stretch.
My biggest concern to my top selection that I'll get to in just a moment is the horse you talked about, Takeover Target. You talk about class, Barry, and the horses that this horse has faced throughout the majority of his career, especially the 2015 campaign, which is where he's run except once. I mean, this horse is facing and beating good horses. I mean, and doing it at Saratoga. And anybody watching this understands that when you're winning turf events at Saratoga, you're beating very good horses. And if he wasn't winning, he was competing very well. I think the only race where he threw in a clunker was the September 5th event where it looked like he got a bad ride by Irad and he was in over his head. You can't go 5 wide on that racetrack against those horses and expect to be a player. He comes right back on a soft turf course, throws out a 121 time form U.S. speed figure, and does it the way he's used to, stalking the pace, turning for home, winning with ease, and not seeing a whip. And I almost went with this horse. And you talk about guys good with their horses off a layoff. 98 days to Chad Brown is like me walking across this room. I mean, that's nothing to that guy. He's the best turf trainer in the country, and I almost pulled the trigger on the 8. But again, I'm looking for value for the most part in this type of show. And we just both know that Chad Brown on turf is going to get bet.
Yes.
So you know how I like to bet turf races. I like horses that I know are going to be forwardly placed because there's a ton of horses in turf events, specifically at Gulfstream Park. And I'm looking for horses that I know that have good tactical speed and going to set a good trip. So I landed on the outside horse, the 11, Heart to Heart. If you go back to his PPs, Barry, it just seemed like after August 2nd, or August 2nd forward, this horse has just gotten it. Wins his race at Monmouth on August 2nd. In style, I looked at the replay, could have won by more than a length and a half. The numbers increased. He's just way in over his head the race after that. I mean, look at the horses he's facing. Grand Arch, the Pizza Man, Tourist. You want to talk about another bad trip. 5 wide, 6 path, not a good trip. Gets back to where he's comfortable and back where he belongs. And what does he do at Churchill Downs? I bet against him that night on November 26th. I took Thatcher Street, and Julian was aggressive from the gate. He took this horse straight to the lead, ran some pretty decent fractions for that level that night, and won the race going away. I just think Heart to Heart breaks the lead, Barry. He either is by himself on the lead or the 10 goes with him. Julian has turned into a much better rider, as I've mentioned numerous occasions after Saratoga. He's back to the guy I used to trust and believe in. So I see the 11 either going to the lead and setting the pace and wiring him, or laying off the 10, turning for home and having every chance to win and holding off the very talented runners that you mentioned in your segment. So I'm with the 11 at 6-1. It's not a tepid pick. I really like this horse. Best trip. Fast horse, tactical speed. He'll win it in the end.
All right. Yeah, I mean, definitely, you see his past performances, you see all those ones, and it's crazy. It's just strange, looking at the PPs out, at least lately, the horse has been running well every other time out, but definitely had excuses. So I think that just may be just a factor of luck or, what have you. But it's definitely something to see in the past performances. You see the horse win by 2. The race before that, he lost by 17. Before that, he wins going away at Monmouth. The race before that, he's down by 5. And it's crazy. I mean, but this horse has every right to win. On Heart to Heart's best day, can definitely take this field. No question about it.
Sure. So Barry on the 7, I'm on the 11, and Barry, who is your top selection of Tournament Talk for January 8th?
My top selection is War Correspondent in race 10, Gulfstream Park.
And mine would be race 9, One More Shot. So that'll do it for the January 8th edition of Tournament Talk on the Tournament Edge. I'm Bobby Shoemaker. That's Barry, the Sniper Spears. And as always, until next time, good luck.